Charlie Jones said, "You will be the same person in 5 years as you are today, except for the people you meet and the books you read." What kind of person are you going to be in 5 years? Hi, my name is Amber. Welcome to my channel. I am super excited about the topic for today because I love books and we're going to talk about books. Maybe you don't consider yourself to be a reader, but I would like to encourage you. It's March, it's still kind of the beginning of the new year 2018. Set yourself a challenge to become a reader because that quote that we started this video with is true. You will be the same person in 5 years, in 1 year from now, except for the people that you meet and the books you read. That is what changes you. And today I'm going to tell you a little bit about how books have changed me. I'd like to say something before we get started. I am really happy that you take time out of your day to watch these videos. It would mean so much to me if you would give me a thumbs up or if you would just drop a comment to let me know that you're listening to what I'm showing in this video and that you are engaged and that you actually care about what you watch. That would be encouraging to me. Also, I'd love it if you would subscribe, because if you subscribe, then you find out faster when I'm posting new videos, and I have a bunch of new videos planned. I do not remember learning to read. I remember my young days of reading, but I don't remember actually sitting down and learning to read. I don't know how old I was when I learned to read. I know that by the time I was 6 years old, I was reading things like The Chronicles of Narnia or Little House on the Prairie, and I was diving through those series repeatedly. So if I was reading that level at 6, I really don't know where exactly I started to read. I don't remember. My mom knows I was an early reader, but she was busy. She had a bunch of little people to keep track of, so she doesn't remember exactly what age I was either. But I know that I grew up loving books. Now in my adult life, I don't have as much time to read, so I have to be really deliberate and careful about when I do have the time to read. I want to choose books that are worthwhile. We're going to start with the actual books that I read growing up. These are children's books. But guess what? Every once in a while, I go back and read a kid's book. Maybe for like the fun of it, or maybe because I want something simple. So whether you are a child or a child at heart, these are some of the books I read growing up, and then we'll move into some of the adult biographies that I'm enjoying now. So the first one that I have to mention would definitely be the Trailblazer books. These are written by Dave and Etta Jackson, and I believe it's a husband and wife team. And they are, at the time I thought it was big stuff reading this great big book, but they have pictures in them. But they are easy reading, and it's a whole series, and it's the main character is fictional, but they have a part in the life of a missionary, so you get to see the missionary's life through the eyes of that fictional character who is a young boy or girl going through some sort of adventure that connects to what the missionary is doing. So a lot of times I was so focused on the fictional part of the story that the missionary life, I didn't think I was paying attention to it, but then now I hear somebody talk about a missionary, I'm like, oh yeah, I read a book about them when I was younger, and it all starts to make sense. Then something that's a little bit more actually like biographical in nature, where these little stubby little books here, I remember getting these in our stockings at Christmas time, and look, only $1.39. So let's see, this is how I got introduced to Hudson Taylor. This is the first book that I read on his life, and these have a picture on every single page. But it's a short little book. It doesn't take that long for a young kid to read, and this is also the first time I heard of Corrie ten Boom. If you do not know who this is, you need to read about her life. She was a survivor of World War II, amazing lady, and she wrote books which I have read now in my adult life, written by her, that have really touched my heart. Then moving on really quickly, because I want to get through as many of these as possible, Heroes of the Faith series. When I got a little bit older, slightly more advanced, this was the first book in the series that I read, John Bunyan. This man, they say, there's a saying about John Bunyan, if you slice him, he bleeds blind. Everything that he writes just is full of Bible scriptures. It's like he couldn't talk without saying something that sounded like it came from the Bible, because it did. He kind of like quoted the Bible without even trying. Anyway, this introduced me to him, and now I read his works and love them. But they also have, let's see, oh, this is another one that I read. Mary Slessor. This might have been my first book that I read that focused on a woman missionary, and I was really impressed by that. She, whew, talk about a fierce, brave woman. Yeah. She's got a really interesting life. Went into Africa. Alright, so, oh, and one more thing about the young books that we're looking at here. There is a series called the Sower series, and it focuses, I believe, on just Americans, but famous Americans, mostly like scientists and inventors and things like that, or people that are connected, like, you know, presidents and things like that. But even though these weren't strictly missionary biographies, I was really impressed by these people's lives and inspired by them. Isaac Newton, and this was my favorite, Johannes Kepler. Both scientists, both Christians who love the Lord and saw evidence of God in what they were discovering. And honestly, when I read these, I really wanted to do better at math and science in school, which were not my strongest subjects. So yay for inspiration on that. Alright, so I was just saturated in these books growing up. These were my heroes. I wanted to be like them. I wanted to have the same kind of adventures they were having. And at first that was like the adventures of, you know, going to Africa, but then it translated into really having a desire to see God do miracles and just change people's lives the way they saw God change people's lives. And I was like, man, this is amazing. So my love for biographies continued, and now I'm going to show you my top 3 favorite biographies as an adult. There are so many, so many. I don't read as much now because I don't have as much time, but when I do read, these are ones that were completely worth the time that it took to read them. Absolute good old favorite. I have read this book over and over and over again. This was written by the daughter of Hudson Taylor. These people came after Hudson Taylor, but they were also missionaries to China the way he was. And spoiler alert, they ended up being martyrs for the cause of Christ in China. They both lost their lives because of what they were doing. And this book is full of excerpts from journals and things that they wrote, which is, I think that's the best addition to a biography because you get to really know the person. There's everything in this book. There's romance, there's faith, there's courage, there's tragedy, and there's hope. And I love this book so much. And it's true, you know? It's not made up. Right. This next book was written in 2016, so it's fairly new addition to my stash, but I love this book. Allow the Children. If you've followed my channel for a while, you know that this is the group that I've actually traveled to Nepal with, so I know the person who wrote this book. And she did an amazing, amazing job. I laughed, I cried, I dreamed. I think that's the biggest thing about this book. It made me dream about what is possible when God is involved in what you do. And I highly recommend this book for anybody that's thinking about starting a ministry, starting a work, starting something even small, and you want to be encouraged that God can do things through people that are just ordinary people like you and me. This is the book for you. Alright, last but not least, I'm going to introduce you to a book I have not even finished yet. I've got 2 chapters left, and it has already become my favorite mission biography I have ever read in my entire life. Alright, A Passion for the Impossible. It's about the life of Lilias Trotter, and it's written by Miriam Huffman Rockness. Doesn't just the title, give you shivers? This lady was a single missionary to Algeria, Africa, in the 1800s, early 1900s. She has such a heart for people. She loved them so much. She had a passion for art and beauty and nature, and she was completely wrapped up in getting to know God and who He was, and this beautiful world that He had made, and how she could be a part of what He was doing. I have found so many quotable things in this book from what she wrote in her diaries. I think everyone should read this in 2018. Highly recommended. what I want to leave you with is this thought. The most life-changing book you could ever read would be the Bible. But I would encourage you to become a reader because the people you meet in books have the power to encourage you and inspire you and dream big. I would never have dreamed that, I would never have dared to hope that somebody like me could be somebody that God would use, except that I see evidence of that in other people's lives, and I'm like, wow, if God could use them, maybe He could use me. I want you to know what it feels like to have that kind of inspiration feeling when you close the covers of a book. Did you ever watch a movie when you were little and think, man, I really would like to be a hero saving the day, and but you know, my life is my life, I'm never gonna do that. Well, for me, I would read these books about these missionaries and I would be like, man, I would love to do what they're doing. But guess what? I get to do what they did. I mean, obviously, I don't think I'm going to be as big of an impact on the world as some of them are and were, but I get to be a missionary. And those were my heroes growing up, and that boggles my mind. So, it is with great joy and pleasure I get to show you some of the books that I loved growing up, and I'm hoping that you may find these interesting too. I'm gonna try to find every book that I mention in this video and link them in the description box, so if you want to read them yourself, you can. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you have a fantastic rest of your day. Goodbye! I have so many more to read.